talk about the many successes you've had this year.
Yeah.
We haven't had a chance to actually sit down and talk about it. So what's been going well, and what have you done that's contributed to that?
I mean, I think that, so I like doing two things, like one for the freshmen, one for the sophomores.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you did that, because that was my follow-up.
Yeah. So with the freshman class, I think, we got like a kind of a late start in some ways, and it's been rocky in a variety of ways, mostly behaviorally. But also kind of, I think, one for me, like trying to adjust to, not a lower bar, but like just a different bar, right? Like, whereas like the sophomores were pushing them in their writing to like complexity, and the freshmen were working on some more elementary details. Clarity and explanation, right? So I'm so thankful in working with Audrey, who like just had that more experience. And we've been able to work so frequently on saying like, our freshman classes are like similar in the way that like on most of our exit tickets, they're getting claimant evidence, which is wonderful. They need to work on reasoning, and we're really trying to work on like how
Sounds like you're already working on that though.
That's like great, right? It's also what like I would say for my sophomores, we usually work with the most during the first part of the year anyway. So that's one.
That's exciting.
It's very exciting stuff.
Yeah.
And as far as like classroom culture, like first period is still a little bit rough, just because like there's so much transition and like so much transportation, but like we're really getting moving, and like the discussions are fun. And the same thing is true in sixth period, where I feel like, again, in spite of like a rocky start, we're finally getting to a point where like things are getting like interesting. I think the topics are more interesting, so that's a good motivation. But also like we're learning like our habits of discussion a little bit, so I think that's great. In my AP class, kind of similarly, like I feel like we're nailing so many elementary steps, so we're moving on to the more fun stuff. Today, actually, we had our trade simulation. It's like the day 9 in unit 2. It was just so fun. It was fun to like hear kids in a real situation like talk about the things and like have like really poignant stuff. Like I had so many kids who were like, oh, like Western Europe's not doing anything, which makes sense because like that's not a big deal right now. But like the folks who were like the Western Europe group were both like, oh, but like I don't want to just be trading with like the Mediterranean. I want to be trading with China. It's like, yeah.
I
like,
love that.
like,
That's so nerdy and cool.
Can you preview like what do you want to do? It's like I don't want to trade through land anymore because that's not helping me. I might like use a boat. And I'm like, you just spoiled like the next unit, right? It's like that's so fun. So that's where I'm at. I think.
I love that. The kids are so smart.
They really are, and like I like having these opportunities to not just have them like write something like, because I think we had fun. We had like real like aha moments or just like applied moments, but like I don't know, they could show what they know and we could have fun with it. And I'm very thankful about that.
I love that. That's awesome. Yeah, I've noticed the positive momentum in your 9th grade culture, and I just want to say I hope you're proud of yourself for the work that you've done, like within yourself and your classroom, working with younger students. I want to say that.
I don't know if I am happy with it. I don't know if I'm proud of it because I think there's a ways to go. But just
you have to acknowledge the progress.
That's exactly it. And like for both myself and for the kids, right? Because like I think so much of it is like, we are together in a, I think increasingly less difficult situation, but like still like, not ideal. But like we are learning each other, and we're learning like how to interact in very positive ways. And I think as much as I might be a little bit proud of myself, I'm also very proud of them. So yes, I agree though.
And what is the impact on the social studies department? Put your leadership hat on now, of them seeing you step in to teach 9th graders.
I think that on one hand, they see that like as like a leadership figure, like I'm someone who is like willing to do what I would maybe ask of them. And that's true not only of like, maybe something changes in our staffing and like, hey, you're teaching a different class now, but also like for coverage, right? Like we're all in this together and we're making moves as we need them, right?
I hired 2 teachers today, by the way.
Congrats. I guess congrats for all of us. Right?
Yes.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
But also like, I think it's hopefully empowering to show that like, there are opportunities for us all to like spread our wings a little bit. And I know that like it's something we've talked about, maybe less specifically, but like we want there to be a psychology, not just one elective class, but maybe something a bit more, or we want like an African or African American studies class, like, and there are those realms to spread out a little bit, and not only have like more like professional opportunity, but even like maybe like a personal opportunity if you feel like that's like. And we talked like before this year started, like I wanted this. I didn't necessarily want it like this, but I'm still very happy.
We didn't want a pandemic either, yeah. But I'm proud of the work you're doing, and I hope you are too. Let's see. I want to shift to a couple of logistics and then talk about the video you sent me in coaching TT.
Yep.
So, how's it going with the script for Kate for the weekly data meeting?
So he's getting me that data this afternoon.
Perfect.
So I'll be getting that script out.
Cool.
I can already.
If you need to push it back, then just communicate, because I've coached TT before,
Yeah.
and so sometimes he gives you things late, and then you need to push it back. But
Well,
it's better to push it back to have it be more impactful.
to be very transparent, I'd actually, because like, and you're on the email chain, like, Kate was like, oh, actually, maybe you don't need to see this because you can't see the AP classes, so this could be exit tickets. And so I was like, okay, so let's just get them from Monday. That way, like,
Okay.
you have a bit of extra time, I'll have a bit of extra time. Like, it adds like, well, it didn't work out because I guess there were some like logistical issues with the exit ticket. That's something I want to talk about, maybe in like the coaching TT part.
Mm-hmm.
But like, we just decided, okay, we're gonna do the Tuesday exit ticket. We're gonna make sure that everything is correct and et cetera, et cetera.
Great.
So I am looking forward to that, and I think I'll still be able to do the turnaround time, because if
Okay.
I can see it and get her the script by this evening, she can look at it.
Okay.
Very
With
good.
TT, I'm sure it's a longer conversation, but I want to
Yeah.
make sure we get to the video.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're probably gonna have to give them an explicit action step, like your handouts have to be done when you
Well,
turn them in,
that's
because
exactly
he
it.
tinkers the night before,
Well, not only that, but like,
and it leads to these snafus.
and something that we've discussed is also an issue, and something that like I'm learning, like I need to be much more, what's the word? I need to be looking out for these things specifically, is like hey, make sure like if your exit ticket says this, you have this rubric, or hey, like if you're asking kids to do X and Y, like you cannot have Z on this because that's not
Correct.
fair, right?
When I look at people's work to provide lesson feedback, I look at the student handouts first,
Yeah.
from the student experience, and then I look at the plan.
And that's something that I know like actually we discussed originally, and that's something that like we had discussed, and again, I'm learning that like, I need to be a little bit frankly more like heavy-handed in that regard.
Just be direct with them. Your handouts have to be in.
Yep.
It's a fact.
Because and
Otherwise, he'll tinker and tinker and tinker.
then like the impact of that is like things are if not totally incorrect and not aligned accurately, and like that's bad for you, it's confusing for the kids, it's all these negatives, like we've got to make sure it's done at this time.
Yep.
So yeah. I agree.
Okay. Just be direct with him.
Yeah.
What was mastery like on your exit ticket yesterday in AP World History? I'm gonna ask you that every time we meet.
For sure. I'm trying to think. Yesterday was. I'm trying to remember.
Or you could even tell me today on your trade. I know you didn't grade them yet though, but.
Right. Well, the exit tickets seem really good right now.
Okay.
So, from my not data, but like my poll in the room, because I'm very elated about that. I'm actually gonna share some like pictures and stuff in the fun chat. But like, I think that for each round, we kind of had like a little like CFU of like, hey, how are things going? What do we seem like it's happening? And kids really stamp this idea that like the most important groups are not like on either end. So like you would think, and before we think who's winning right now at the start, you think China, right? And for every step of the way, we kind of like check in and say like who's winning now, and like we agreed that in both classes, like Silk Road is the most important in like spreading things, and they are the ones who are coming up the most, right? They gain like in some cases 300% of their like points over the course of the.
I feel like I learn history every time I meet with you. Next week when we meet, I'm gonna ask you what is the mastery from the day before.
Well, and I do want to stamp that like as far as like our exit ticket, like so many kids are being very specific as far as like our regions.
Great.
But two, they're saying like, and I know this because in the activity, right? They're giving me that explanation, which I don't love, and I know this because, but
We'll
let's
get
start. So I'm enthusiastic about that.
Great, I love it. So I want to talk about the coaching video from TT.
Yes.
I watched it, and I want to start off with a really big success and build off of that to talk about your next step in coaching. So I always like to do strengths-based coaching where we talk about something that went well and build on that to move forward. So one really successful thing was you identified that he had used the rubric and you had him unpack the impact of that. Why was that so important?
I mean, I think, again, as we've discussed before, but I think like having someone else like identify it, it is one thing for me to say, do this, and sometimes you need that, but it's more impactful for that individual to say, oh, this is how it made it easier for me. And I think in this instance, he was like, it was easier for me to like grade it, right? I could grade these very quickly. But then to say like, what's up with the kids? And he's like, oh yeah, like I think the kids, did more. I think the kids had this impact. So I think that you could even see in his face, like his realization, it was much more like meaningful and much more like internalized.
Awesome. And so that builds on to my next question, and I know you know the answer to this, but we talk about exemplars a lot with students, but when coaching teachers, why is it also important to have the exemplar answer in mind?
I think it's important to know that, like, one, if, we're doing this and I don't get the answer you're looking for, I can prompt you with some questions so that you can still arrive there.
And you did that in the video.
Or if you're totally off, I can maybe say, okay, actually, I'm glad you noticed that, but I was looking more at this. And you can still build off, still raise that barn, but still say, actually, I think this is the more brain divert if necessary.
And then to build off of that for the prompting, why is the specificity of the prompting question so important?
I mean, I think that, one, it shows you have looked at and you've internalized as much as they have. I think that having that investment is super important. I think the second thing though is when we're really dealing with how to make things that are pretty good, great, the details are what's important, right? So if you can very, very specific, let's look just at this. One, you can narrow your focus, and so there's no, or at least less chance of confusion. But secondly, we can say there's actually only one thing that needs to be tweaked.
Awesome.
So we don't worry about 2 and 3, we just worry about 1.
Great. So in this video, it was clear to me that you had known what you wanted to celebrate and unpack with him, and you knew what you were looking for. I want you to specifically pay attention to the follow-up question you asked and think about how could you have asked a more specific follow-up question.
For sure.
I love that move. I see even on that you kind of had that
I'm gonna go back a little bit further just
Yeah.
in case we get it.
Also, just platform us more, stuff.
Yeah. So I like that you're noting the writing space and I want to be clear. It's not just about the formatting. So I get what you're saying. Maybe you update it day before include stuff. I love that move. And I see even on that you kind of had that kind of graphic organizer already, which I noticed that. Let me be more specific. On the starting activity for that, look at the starting activity on those 2 examples and the starting activity on yours, and let me know what you think. Differences, similarities, positives, negatives.
I think that's it right there. So giving too many things to look for, especially that kind of big of activity. I should have chunked it down more and said okay, let's look at these 2 things. One, just give them some time, and say what did you notice was a difference. Unpack that. What did you notice was maybe more positive or so really step by step.
So moving forward in your coaching, you know your exemplar. How are you gonna strengthen your questioning?
So the number 1 step is even that, saying what do you notice is a similarity or difference. It's not super specific. So 1 is as if chunking, but 2 to make sure I'm chunking by very specific steps. That way we can build to what we want understanding to be.
Great. So that's going to be your action step moving forward. I put ask specific questions that prompt the teacher to state the exemplar response, script questions that prompt the teacher to identify the exemplar, and chunk as needed. So what is your next coach? I know you have a weekly data meeting with, I'll send that to you by the way. I know you have a weekly data meeting with TT. What is your next action step with Audrey? Is it the follow-up to the monitoring, if I'm remembering right?
That is, we did, what's it called, a unit internalization yesterday. So
it can be something for next week, because I know you had with her kind of the next couple in queue.
Yeah, we're going to be meeting on and off for the next couple of weeks. So we can do it next Monday.
What is the next session you have with her?
It's going to be about that, and specifically, it's I don't really have a next step for her, because when I monitor her class, she's using an exemplar, she's checking it off on her clipboard. She actually uses her seating chart, which I think is great because
so is Layla.
Yeah, she already did that, so it was really just a quick fix for her. So it's one to notice her successes, but 2 to just say okay, so now that we have this, and to kind of unpack the impact on that, but then say the next step has got to be let's get more she has great participation, but sometimes it's how do I say this? What bar are you holding for that participation? Kind of similar to what I think one of my big personal action steps is. So that's a fun thing because I've always thought our relationship is very collaborative. So I'm hoping that we can continue that.
So you mean bar for you went from collecting data to bar for participation.
Yeah.
So are you talking about
I think
when she
these
follows up from the monitoring?
Yeah, I think that I don't know what the follow for monitoring needs to be other than to say I've noticed you doing this. I think that we've mastered that action.
Awesome. And then how is she responding to it? That's my question.
Oh, I get you. How is she responding to the mastery of that step?
She's going around and collecting data, then what is she doing with it?
Oh, I understand. So she's, I think, using that to inform her like next step in how she paces her classroom.
Okay.
So sometimes, for example, in the class I saw her in last week, she actually like, took a little bit of time off. She said like, hey, like in this round, we're actually
Great.
progressing really fast.
Great.
So I guess I need to be specific in that regard, but then also maybe think about like, I guess that's where my next part with the CFUs come in.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have like the whole class like pause points and stamp points, like
Mm.
that is what I think we need to lead into. Because again, I think she does a pretty good job, but like my action step is probably going to be like, you should name like, hey, you know, like 75% of us got this right. Let's like debrief that, and then like let's move on. Because I think that sometimes we, again, this is true for myself, we lose a little bit of time in that. We can like take too much time.
Okay.
And maybe she could use that data to say like, I'm gonna warm call, you know, someone who has like an almost there answer.
Okay.
And like get like someone else to stamp it.
So I'm going to share a recent action step with Wix in the G-chat with you, and
Yeah.
I want you to see if you think this would be a helpful follow-up for her in response to data.
For sure.
And then I want to practice your action step, which is to script those specific questions. Oh, I just chatted it to Audrey. Oops, ignore me. Great. Wrong person. Dang it. Oh well, sneak preview.
Yeah.
Dang it. Here we go. I just chatted to you, but this was Aaron Wicks. And it honestly makes sense. I sometimes notice, since they both came from the same school, similar trends.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is great because I think that she does more so than me utilize the turn and talk.
Love it. So let's
So-
get it into
so
Whetstone, and then I want you to take a few minutes to think about what are your prompting questions going to be to get her there. And then I can share what I asked Wix, and we can compare.
And I put this in schedule, right?
And, you can. Are you in Whetstone?
Yeah.
You go to start, observe, put in her name, and then you go all the way down to see it name and do it. And then you can copy and paste that action step in there. And then when you save this, you'll have a draft here, and anytime you go back to that home page, you can always go back to you can always go back to it and keep working on it. So if you go back up,
Yeah.
then they see it right here. This is the part where I want to see what prompting questions are you asking to guide her to name this.
For sure.
And I'm going to try to find my notes from Wix so we can compare. Come on, computer. Well, I wrote it on a piece of paper, not in here, so. are the questions you scripted? Can I
So,
read?
yeah. So I had 3 big ones. So one, like, why is it important to stamp the key points in a lesson? I don't think that, I mean, points of confusion are a thing, but I would say just like to stamp it like specific intervals. And what I'm kind of looking for is like, one, to like just highlight those like key understandings as you're building towards the exit ticket, but also to provide that like chunked understanding, right? Like give that building blocks that like, you know, if we put A, B, and C together, that's our thing.
I love that.
The second one, what's the impact of having the students turn and talk? And, you know, I think very broadly, like, students can just build off of each other, but I think very specifically, and actually I should include this part too, like, if we use that data and we can say like, you know, you two should work together because I know like you have it, maybe you're not quite there, I can pair you because I think it's much more effective to have you share with that other student than maybe to get like 2 people who don't know what they're talking about. Everyone is doing it, right? I guess that's,
I love it.
I'll still put that just more engagement, I'll put that 3rd point. And then why is it important to have the student stamp the message? 1, it's in student-facing language. 2, you get that kind of like peer leadership. Like, this isn't like my understanding. This is like your understanding. You guys arrived at this conclusion.
Okay.
But then, lastly, just naming the success in the room, and that's another way we can incorporate data. Is like, and I know that like most folks were there, but now 100% of us are there. Or you can say like, we were missing this step if it's a moment of confusion, but now that we've achieved this understanding together, now we can redo, or now we can revise or improve or whatever
Love that.
the situation is.
So this is really effective because you have your specific questions and your exemplar answers, and they're bulleted in a way that it's going to make it really easy for you to look at this when she's talking and be like, and what about peer leadership? And have her talk more about that. My one question is, why did you have this one second and not first? Genuinely curious.
I think I was going through this like step by step, but this could even be, I could move those 2.
Because I think that this is like you need metacognition before they can stamp.
Sure.
So I would do that question first. So she's like, okay, they turn and talk, then I need them to stamp.
Yep.
What's
So really this one should probably be last, right? Because we're talking about like, what's the point of having the student stamp it? Oh, I guess.
It doesn't really matter. I do just think this has to be first.
I agree. That makes sense.
Why does it make sense?
Because, well, these 2 bullet points, the first and the third one that I have, like they are at least about like the same topics.
Correct. Yep.
So like, again, we're chunking right now.
I love it. So you're going to meet with her on Monday.
Correct.
Can you film that for me?
Absolutely.
And then next week, meeting during 5th period is just not realistic. And so is there a day of the week that you prefer? That maybe Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday during Wednesday or Friday? Wednesday or Thursday? Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. God, I can't talk, I'm sorry.
Yeah, totally fine. Next week you said?
Yep, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday.
Thursday is fine.
Well, it's usually when I meet with Katie.
Friday is fine.
And I have care team. Wednesday is too soon?
I can try for Wednesday.
So if you're meeting
Is
with
that
her Monday, just send me the video?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I should have even asked. I realized I didn't even actually have a choice.
Yeah.
Tuesday or Wednesday are my only options. I'm sorry,
That's
Simon.
totally fine.
Okay, so I'm going to move it, and I won't teach biology 4th period that day. I'll teach it 2nd.
And you're gonna send me that thing, so I have it.
Diamond coaching session on Wiedemann